What do you do if you're visiting a foreign country for the first time, you don't speak the language, and you only have 4 days to pack it all in? Travel writer Christine Negroni and her sister Andrea faced this very situation just last month when they booked a 4-day trip to Tokyo, Japan. Both of them are on the line with us now. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning, Pat.
First of all, with the Japanese economy not doing so well, is now a good time to visit? Things pretty cheap there?
Well, actually, we were on a budget, I have to say, so maybe everything seemed expensive because we were really trying to keep costs down. But you know what? Lee, what do you think?
Cheap would not be the first word that came to mind, Pat. We found good value in hotels. That is, for a Marriott price in Tokyo, we found we were in hotels that were closer to a Park Hyatt or even a Four Seasons standard. But once you left the hotel, we found things quite expensive. A simple dinner, that you might have here for $25 or $30 would be twice that in Japan. Shopping was phenomenally expensive. We tried a couple of garments on at the high-end department stores. They weren't in the hundreds. They were in the thousands of U.S. dollars.
Yikes.
We found it quite expensive.
Well, now both of you, I understand, are seasoned travelers who I assume can get around on your own pretty well. Yet for this trip, you hired some tour guides. How come, Christine?
Well, as I said, we had 4 days and we wanted to cram it all in, and we really were nervous. In some countries you can look at the signs and kind of figure it out, but, we weren't even going to be able to read the street signs in Japanese, so we really did want to try and see as much as we could and comprehend what we saw. And when I read about these Goodwill Guides in a book, I thought, this is brilliant. These are people who are proud of their country and want to show it off. They don't charge you anything but their transportation costs, and they're getting something out of it, too, because they want the opportunity to speak English. So it's a win-win. And I have to tell you, our experience with these Goodwill Guides was just fantastic. And here's an example of that. In fact, they're listening now. They're listening to your radio show. I told them about it. They're all excited to listen to your show. So konnichiwa to all those folks in Japan. But let me tell you an example of how great these Goodwill Guides are. I'm working on a story right now for the International Herald Tribune involving a company in Japan. And I got in touch with one of the Goodwill Guides, not one that I used, but one that I knew about, and asked him if he'd make some calls. Well, he's doing all the legwork for me. And I said, what can I do to pay you back? He says, nothing. I'm having fun. So that's the way they just spread goodwill around the globe. They get their chance to practice English, and they sure do make me feel like the Japanese are fabulous people. I'm enjoying dealing with them.
Well, Andrea, I would also think that they help you avoid the tourist traps. You had 3 different guides during the 4 days. Tell me about the first one. She sounds like a hoot.
Well, the first one was a young banker, 27 years old. Her name was Natsuko Yasuda. And she called us the day we arrived and said, what do you want to do? And it was a Friday. So we said to her, we don't know Tokyo. What would you ordinarily do on a Friday night? And Pat, she said to us, I would go out for drinks and dinner with my friends. So like a TGI Friday kind of thing. And, a TGIF kind of thing. And so we said, that's exactly what we'd like to do. We'd like to go out with you and your friends. So she took us to a little bar restaurant that we never could have found, and although we would have probably had some sake or plum wine or something very conventional, she said, let me deal with the menu, and she ordered a beverage, a spirits called shochu, and this was a little clear spirits, which comes, in very small glasses, and you can have an inexpensive one for $6 or $8, and they went up to about $600 per shot.
Wow.
And we sat there with her friends, and we drank different shochus, and she ordered lots of food for us, and we basically sat around laughing as you would with a group of friends on a Friday night. And we had just met her an hour before. So it was really wonderful. It was an experience we wouldn't have had on our own.
The second tour guide, instead of being a banker, was a chemical engineer who was doing some moonlighting. And I want to hear the story. You two got to go see sumo wrestling. Christine, are you a fan now?
I am telling you, you haven't lived, Pat, until you've walked into an arena and seen 35 naked, large men in thongs rolling around on a dirt floor. There's just no other way to describe it. But I have to tell you, Asuki Takahisa, who was our guide, was a miracle worker, because when I called him up and said we really want to see sumo, he said, I don't think it's possible. The season doesn't start. Now they keep them, they live in these things called stables, and he said maybe we can get a stable guide, a tour of a stable. I'll check it out. And then he called us up early Saturday morning and said, no can do. The stables, they don't want any tourists. The season's about to begin, blah, blah, blah. So he arrives at the hotel, and he says, well, we're going to see sumo. He had found an exhibition at the Kokogigan Sumo Arena, and it was just like the upper crust of the sumo wrestlers who were going to be doing this exhibition for fans who want to get I think it's like the spring training event, because everyone there knew sumo, and they were all there to see their favorite guy and see, how he'd weathered over the season and whether he was back in shape for the season. So it was fabulous, and there were no other Westerners in the place. We were the only ones there. It was men and women and children, but they were paying close attention to their sumo wrestlers, and Suzuki explained to us everything, because sumo is not just a sport, it's also a religion. So, he explained why they did the things they did, and, why what to Westerners looks like such a comical sport, why it really has its own dignity. So we left appreciating sumo in a way we never would have had we gone without him.
When you're in the crowd, a sumo crowd, how do you root for somebody? I mean, is it like a baseball game, a basketball game, or can you compare?
There's no rooting. You could hear a pin drop in that arena, and it was packed. The most you would hear is a sharp intake of breath.
Well, I had just read something online a day or two ago about how there are now female sumo wrestlers because they want sumo to become an Olympic sport, and you can't have a single-gender sport in the Olympics, and so now women are doing sumo wrestling.
Well, we didn't see that.
I hadn't heard that.
Now, you had a third guide who I would think could be nicknamed your personal shopper because that person took you to an open-air market. Did it help you steer you to good buys, and was that person able to dicker for prices for you?
We didn't dicker because we didn't buy much other than chocolate, which they had in flavors ranging from wasabi to banana-flavored Kit Kat bars, things we couldn't get at home. The most appealing things that we saw had to do with fish. They had all sorts of fish and shaved salmon and different sorts of things that we were not confident we could bring home because nothing was vacuum packed. It was all, sort of freshly packed in jars and bottles. But there were clothes, and the Japanese size is fairly small for us Americans. Even Christine, who is quite petite, is probably a large in the local market in Tokyo. So clothes were not really sized for us. Household goods and things like that, which they had a lot of, take up a lot of space. CDs and videos, we didn't really understand the language. So we actually bought foods that we could consume at once or candy that we could take home. We didn't see a lot of bargaining going on, but there was a lot of jostling and shouting out. It was a little noisier than most of our experiences in Tokyo, and lots of fun.
Well, it sounds like you sisters do have fun traveling together, and we are out of time. But Christine, if people want to find out more about the Goodwill Guides, is there a website they can go to?
Yes, I'd say Google Goodwill Guides in Japan, and they're also called the Systemized Goodwill Guide Groups, or the SGGG groups in Japan. So either one of those, I think, will take them there. And also, I'll have them up on my blog, Flying Lessons. That's christinenegroni.blogspot.com. I'll put it up there also so people can find them through me.
Well, what a terrific idea, and I appreciate you two giving me some time this morning. Christine Negroni and her sister Andrea, who likes to be called Lee. Thank you both very much.
Lovely talking to you. Sayonara.